Comic-Con is almost here, where Disney is likely to unveil all upcoming Marvel movies with titles and release dates. So I wanted to get this video out there to both predict or propose a possible Spider-Man sequel. Spoilers ahead for Far From Home. If you haven't seen it, go see it, because if it misses the $1 billion mark, Sony is contractually allowed to remove him from the MCU going forward. However, if I had to guess right now, I'm almost positive the sequel will either be Spider-Man Homeless, emphasizing Peter being framed by Jonah and New York possibly rejecting him, or Spider-Man Homefront, where he has to face off against the Sinister Six. Homefront could also work for Spider-Verse if they all come to this dimension, but in my opinion, they should wait at least one more movie before doing that, so it could possibly lead up to Secret Wars. Other joke ideas include Spider-Man Home Alone, Homesick, Mobile Home, Homeowner. However, in knowing how unlikely it is, I would like to suggest an idea. Spider-Man Retirement Home. How would a nursing home relate to Spider-Man, you might ask? It dawned on me as I was leaving the theater after seeing Far From Home. The director John Watts and his team at Marvel have been using these analogies as follows for their past films. Aunt May is the cool older sister, Tony is the cool dad, and Mysterio is the cool uncle. So, where do you take it next? My first thought was cool grandpa. And who is the go-to cool grandpa that we all know and love? Steve Rogers himself. I imagine Steve will go the grittier Logan route, as he is an old man who is potentially devastated following witnessing the death of Peggy for a second time, especially if he cannot go to her funeral in order to avoid a past version of himself. This might not be 100% accurate to how the time travel works, as the Russos have claimed that Cap would need another Pym particle to return to his original reality, but unless that means that we have zero Steve Rogers in our MCU's timeline, then I think we're okay. Assuming we can even get the character, and that Chris Evans is on board, why would he be important to the story? How funny would it be if Captain America was living in the same retirement home as an older villain, say, Spencer Smythe? I think Smythe works as a good villain for two reasons. First of all, he has ties to J. Jonah Jameson in the comics, who was just seen in the Far From Home after credits scene, and second, he builds robots. Since Marvel likes to introduce new villains that build off older technology within the MCU, I think if Smythe used vibranium in his robots, it would deepen the connection between he and Steve. Peter could be fighting one of Smythe's robots, and afterward, a tiny drone retrieves some vital weaponry, let's say Pym tech. Another option is nanotech, which I also like due to the Tony connection that all these movies seem to have. It's at this point that the drone would bring the tech back to the retirement home where Smythe collects it, and Peter runs into Steve. Now Smythe has the tech, and Peter has an ally. Without his robot, Smythe is largely powerless outside of his smarts, which he'll use in his efforts to adapt the Pym tech into two different devices. The Pym flying and shrinking technology will go to a suit he calls the Beetle, whereas the blaster technology goes to a glider he loans to Roderick Kingsley, a friend in the retirement home who will become the Hobgoblin. Out to defend the world from the dangers of Spider-Man following Mysterio's fabricated viral video, the Hobgoblin tracks down Peter and attacks him. Abner Jenkins, an assistant mechanic working for Smythe and a friend of the Tinkerer, dons the Beetle suit in hopes to use it for robbing banks. Spider-Man's attempts to stop the Beetle leads to a 2-on-1 showdown, the Beetle and the Hobgoblin versus Spider-Man, that is, until Cap emerges from the shadows. Once the duo puts the villains in their place, we will set up a Sinister Six face-off with the Scorpion, Vulture, Beetle, Hobgoblin, Mysterio because he's probably still alive, and now Smythe, who is not in jail, therefore he's able to build a bigger, better robot to break out the other villains. If we want a full-on 6 versus 1, Steve can always step aside due to tiring out of old age or something like that. And whether at the end of the third movie or as the climax of a fourth, a Sinister Six fight is hopefully on its way. Even though this method of introducing it is truly goofy in some ways, it would no doubt be entertaining and bring with it the same lighthearted theme that Spider-Man is all about in this series. Just as the other movies, this title could be twofold, both referring to the location of the battle as well as representing how Jameson attempts to force Spider-Man into retirement. So that's it. I just wanted to share this with you guys on the off chance that any of my home-based titles share any resemblance to the big announcement at Comic-Con.